Hello and welcome back to episode 4 of the Sealcast podcast. I'm joined here with Connor Franklin.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm alright, you?
That's good to hear. That's what we like to hear. Today we're going to talk about women's football in general rather than focusing on the Chester team. So women's football has been great recently. It's been growing ever since the Euros, since the World Cup, where unfortunately our Lionesses lost. But where do you think the future of it lies?
It's got a massive growing industry at the minute with Sky Sports. You've got all the television programmes taking over with, like, every weekend there's always a women's football match on to see. In terms of the growth itself, it's massively growing every season at the minute. You've got new up and coming talents who look towards their, like, heroes, for example, like the people like Lauren James and your others like Leah Williamson who have won the Euros. They want to be like them. So yeah, it's massively growing week in, week out, and year on, year in.
Do you think there's a worry with the Champions League format that they have over there? Whereas you see with the WSL, the main leagues, they get loads of traction, but the Champions League games, you're not seeing them like advertised as much, you'd say, as you would for the main WSL leagues.
I think the biggest thing as well is with that is the fact that DAZN take it, and it's not a British telecom, so you never see the Champions League is very rarely on TNT or any of them. It's always DAZN who have taken it, and I don't think people pay as much attention with DAZN because they're not like a mainstream within the UK. Obviously they do the boxing and things like that, but they don't stream football normally.
And there's not much like on there. Like there's a boxing event, maybe you'd get one every 2 weeks.
I think the biggest flaw of that as well is the advertisement. There's never any advertisement for Women's Champions League, which then doesn't attract the attention it needs. But then you look and, like, for example, the Emirates of Arsenal playing Real Madrid, and they've sold that out, so there's going to be 60,000 people in that stadium.
That's incredible.
So
yeah,
for them, it's massively under advertised, but then it's really well structured of how people are aware of buying tickets because of the clubs themselves.
Yeah, I think it's something they've got to focus on, because I think women's football's got the international scene is where the money's made. That is where everyone's got their eyes on. They're getting sold out crowds. And then on a club football level, I think it's going great, but there's work to do. One thing I'm worried about at the minute is the transfer market they've got going on. There hasn't been £1 million transfer.
No.
I think they're still stuck like, say, in the 80s in comparison with the market. But then I think there's a little issue with the free agent market, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it tends to be that obviously you can pick up the best talent in world football in the women's game for less than £1 million, which when you look at the men's game, you're looking 5 years ago, maybe 6, you've got the likes of Neymar going for stupid amounts of money, but like you've got quality players who are like the best in the world, and they're not going for very much, and it seems we're a little bit stuck in time, which shouldn't be the case. But then at the same time, it's a really good thing for women's football because you're buying the best talent for not that much of a price, but your stocks are rising, but you're not spending that much, which is probably a positive. But a negative would be, obviously, you look at it and go, oh, they're only worth £1 million, they can't be that good. But that's being very perspective to the men's game, if that makes sense.
Do you think there's enough like money put in by the owners, like in comparison? Say we've got, I saw the interview with Sir Jim Ratcliffe the other day, where he was like, it seemed he didn't really know what he was talking about, was it?
Well, from what I understood from it, he went, the men's bring in 500 odd million a year for the ground, for everything, including ticketing, everything that comes into the club via the fan is via the men's. But then they're like, the women's game only brings in like 10 million, so it's not really my focus, which in my opinion is very irrelevant. If you're a football owner, you should be invested in both teams. It shouldn't be based on finance. You should be looking to grow the women's team as much as the men's team, because they're both incline with each other.
That's true. It's also like because he hasn't changed his opinion for the academy teams or any of the other stuff teams. It's just said for the women's.
Yeah, so the up and coming teams seem to have a lot. Basically, the men's here. So let's say this is the scale of Jim Radcliffe's view. So you've got the men, the academy, and then you've got the women at the bottom.
Yeah.
Which the women shouldn't be at the bottom because they're as important as the men's team. When you've got your women's team playing at Old Trafford, that shows the importance, because you wouldn't play them at Old Trafford if you weren't that bothered. Like you'd keep them at, is it Lee they play at? Or something like that. So Jim's I feel like he's got the wrong interpretation of it. He should be caring as much, he should be looking to win the Champions League with the women as much as he would with if the men were in it, which obviously they're not, but they're focusing on Europa League, so they should be both looking at the same thing and going, right, we need to focus on WSL to get in the Champions League or win WSL. That will bring more income, and then more income again if you go far in the Champions League. So I think, yeah, there needs to be more financial structure and investment into the women's game. Like, for example, Arsenal seems to be playing frequently at the Emirates now, and that's all down to the Cronkies saying, right, we're going to bring investment into the women's game and bring more fans involved. Like, they sell out Boreham Woods ground every week when they play there, but then they've moved to the Emirates and they're selling it out nearly. So it's definitely, it seems like he's got the wrong balance, personally.
Do you think with the stadiums, do you think these women's teams deserve their own stadiums, or should they both play in the same stadium?
See, this is a difficult one. I think personally, they should unite it. I think the women's team should play at the same place as the men's because they have the equal right to do that. I don't think it makes a difference. I think personally, you put them in the same place. You don't have another stadium. Like, I understand the women's games a little bit further behind than the men's. That's obvious to see, but that's not anyone's fault. That's just because of the up and coming horizon of the women's game has grown massively in the last 10 years, let's say. The men's game's been going since, what are we talking, 1930s?
1800s, yeah.
It's been massive.
A long time.
That's down to the slow progress. Obviously, we look back in time and you have women who were restricted from playing football, then you've got the other bans and things like that. Men never had that problem, so it's had that time to grow, which now is the time for women to go, right, let's get into the main stadiums. And I think it's perfect time, and I think moving women and men into the same stadium would really work. Like, I think women are very well entitled, for example, for both United teams to play at Old Trafford because they're both representing the same thing. They want to win for Man United, so yeah. I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that because I've been to a couple of women's stadiums. I went to the Everton one last year, and it was for a WSL game. It was Everton versus Tottenham last year that I went to, and the stadium was like that should not be.
No, it sounds hard, but it's like being in a park.
It does feel that way.
It
not
feels like you're in a park, and that's not how. The women shouldn't have to feel like that. I feel like they should be in a world-renowned stadium because they're playing at the best level they can. There's a reason Everton, Man United, City, Arsenal are all top clubs, and they should be playing in the top places.
Like there are international players here that are selling out 70,000 off for these international games. But then when it comes to club level, you're playing in front of, you've got one stand, you might get 1,000 people there.
Yeah, it's like England. They should be playing at Wembley. I disagree with the fact that England don't play at Wembley every time.
They should be.
England women should play at Wembley every time because they sell it out every time, but yeah, they seem to move them to the smaller capacity stadiums. They never play at Old Trafford. Like the England men, you'll play at Wembley, but then you'll go to like Old Trafford or you'll go to Villa Park, who are you get in the same level as Wembley, but well, women seem to go from Wembley to then, with no disrespect, they'll go to like a League One ground or a League Two ground. It's not the same.
And they can sell these stadiums.
Yeah,
they proved it. They've shown it many times.
Yeah.
But I think women's football is going in a great direction.
Yeah,
I think
100%.
Certain parts of the league aspect, I think there's definitely work to do.
Yeah, 100%. There's definitely work to do, but it's all going in the right direction. Like I can see next 5 years, I could possibly see maybe 10. You could see like main women's teams moving into full time, moving into the men's stadiums because why not? What's stopping them? What more can women physically do to prove a point? And I think that would be the point that would be made really relevant to go, this is the women's game, this is how big we are.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Thank you for your time.
No worries.